These newspaper article readings are not for the faint-hearted or the squeamish. If you're at all sensitive, I might suggest these aren't for you. If in doubt, check the description below. It'll tell you which topics are covered in this particular episode. There's both human and animal suicides, and you heard that right. There's also horrific descriptions of injuries, as well as the deaths of youngsters. So don't do it to yourself if you're prone to nightmares, is all I'll say right now. Not all the articles are horrible. Some of them are uplifting, some of them show incredible bravery and heroism. There are near misses. So these were picked as showing life prior to health and safety, as well as for the crazy and curious details some contain with other miscellaneous happenings that kind of struck me enough to post the articles to Twitter, despite not having too much relevance to Scotland necessarily. These are worldwide topics, and they didn't have any real connection to the projects I was working on and researching at the time. I just happened to have come across them by the way, kind of thing. So we'll get into them, shall we? What we're going to do here is we're going to do a lucky dip of newspaper articles to really mix them up a wee bit, because while I'm doing the researches, I'm obviously coming up with the same kind of terms and things. So we'll mix them up even further. So to that end, I have all of the newspaper titles and dates of the articles. Okay, let's find out what's left in the hat, shall we? We'll start with the Edinburgh Evening News for the 12th of September 1905. That's what this is. This is a bit of a longer article, and as we've heard in previous episodes, the US had a lot of railway accidents. This is a report of another one of them. This is particularly terrible. New York elevated railway accident. Shocking incidents. A New York correspondent telegraphing yesterday says, "There was a shocking accident this morning on the Manhattan Elevated Railroad operated by the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, in which 10 passengers were killed and 40 injured. Many of the latter were so badly hurt that little hope remains for their recovery. It was between 7 and 8 o'clock that the accident occurred, and the train was crowded with men coming into the city to business along the 9th Avenue line. At 53rd Street, there is a switch which turns the trains when required along the street and thence to the 6th Avenue line. Apparently, the signalman, in error, set the points for the train to turn to the left along 53rd Street instead of proceeding straight ahead down 9th Avenue. The train left the station at 59th Street a few minutes after 7 and proceeded at a speed of about 15 miles an hour. All the seats were occupied and the corridors were filled with passengers standing." Pointsman's double blunder. At 53rd Street, the train unexpectedly turned towards the 6th Avenue Junction line and the first car took the curve safely. It would seem that the man operating the points at that moment realised that he had made a mistake, for the points suddenly closed, running the second car along 9th Avenue. There was a moment's strain between the first and second cars, and then the second broke away and turned a somersault over the low parapet into the street below. It fell about 30 feet and landed on its end. The impact was so great that the carriage was smashed and the lower end was driven in, pinioning the occupants in a mass of debris. Many were killed outright. Others screamed with agony, unable to extricate themselves. The third car pulled up with a jerk at the junction and turned off the line also, but the end caught the corner building across the narrow street and the car balanced between the line and the building. The frightened occupants crawled out of the car, gained the ledge of the railroad, and escaped. Passenger decapitated. Another telegram says, "The accident is the worst in the history of the elevated railroad, and this is the first time that a carriage has fallen into the street below. The second car, as it fell into the street, besides turning upside down, also turned completely around. The sides broke to splinters as it struck the ground, and, generally speaking, those who had been standing were hurled into the street, while those who had seats were jammed in by the benches. A piece of metal decapitated a passenger sitting in the front part of the car, making a perfectly clean cut. The head was found 60 feet away from the body. The street is filled with debris. The fourth carriage lodged against the fire escapes of the corner of a building, and the passengers in this and the fifth car escaped down them after climbing out of the windows of the train. The motorman of the forward car was attacked by the crowd, but he soon convinced his assailants that it was a switchman who was responsible for the accident. The current was cut off all the elevated lines as soon as the accident occurred, but the sale of tickets was continued, and the police had to quell some slight rioting among the enraged public, who demanded the return of their money as they could not be conveyed to their destination. And that's from the Edinburgh Evening News for the 12th of September, 1905. What an accident. Oh my word. You don't really get elevated railways in Britain. Obviously they go across bridges over roads, but you do see them in American TV shows. So just imagining one of those trains like going off into a crowded street below, and oh my word, it's just such a terrible accident to have happened. I don't know what they could have done to have prevented that. Really, it was on the signalman, it was on the pointsman to make sure that he's doing his job correctly. Obviously now we have varying things in place that will circumvent human error where possible. It's not said what happened to that pointsman. It's not indicating whether he faced any criminal liability for the accident. Obviously, was it a driver attacked the motorman? Was attacked by a crowd because they'd have been looking to blame somebody in the immediate aftermath. So they would have just gone for any train official that they could find, I think, and he just happened to be the one found. Yeah, it's a really terrible accident. Okay, as always, we'll hope for something a little more positive. We have the Edinburgh News and Literary Chronicle for the 8th of March, 1856. Okay, I like this one. Sea serpent in the Highlands. The village of Lurbost, parish of Loch Lewis, is at present the scene of an unusual occurrence. This is no less than the appearance in one of the inland freshwater lakes of an animal which, from its great size and dimensions, has not a little puzzled our island naturalists. Some suppose him to be a description of the hitherto mythological water kelpie, while others refer it to the minute descriptions of the sea serpent which are revived from time to time in newspaper columns. It has been repeatedly seen within the last fortnight by crowds of people, many of whom have come from the remotest parts of the parish to witness the uncommon spectacle. The animal is described by some as being in appearance and size like a huge peat stack, while others affirm that a 6-oared boat could pass between the huge fins that are occasionally visible. All, however, agree in describing its form as that of the eel, and we have heard one, whose evidence we can rely upon, state that in length he supposed it to be about 40 feet. It is probable that it is no more than a conger eel after all, animals of this description having been caught in the Highland lakes, which have attained a huge size. He is currently reported to have swallowed a blanket inadvertently left on the bank of the lake by a girl herding cattle. A sportsman ensconced himself with a rifle in the vicinity of the loch during a whole day, hoping to get a shot, but did no execution. And that's from the Inverness Courier, as reported in the Edinburgh News and Literary Chronicle for the 8th of March, 1856. And of course there had to be that one guy out who was just going to shoot the thing. That's just typical. But sea serpent in the Highlands, man. Yeah, I like it. We've got a few posts on random Scottish history sites that are devoted to water kelpies and things, stories, fictional stories about sea serpents and water animals, water cryptids. It's really common in Scotland to find these stories. I think, was it not most likely St. Columba that came into contact with Nessie at one point, apparently. So, yeah, very prolific, these stories about sea serpents. We'll have another one. I think we'll just have the one more for this episode. We have the Aberdeen People's Journal for the 17th of February 1906. See what this has for us. That's not a very positive article. Extraordinary shooting accident at Peterhead. Man mistaken for an otter. George Wilson Stephen, 25 years old, fisherman, Buckenhaven, received serious injury by shooting on Thursday night last week. He had gone out with a brother to shoot wild ducks, and they had hidden themselves among some whins on the banks of the Uggy. Stephen's head alone was showing above the bushes, and 3 men who had been shooting on the opposite side of the river mistook him, it is said, for an otter. One of them fired, and Stephen received part of the charge in his face, several pellets entering his left eye. In the Aberdeen infirmary to which the injured man was removed, it was found necessary to remove the injured eye. And that's from the Aberdeen's People's Journal for the 17th of February 1906. A man was mistaken for an otter? I don't even know how likely that is. Did they maybe just see the back of his head and just think that it was like the fur that they were seeing? I don't know. I feel like this happens too often where hunters will shoot another person in the idea that it was a different animal that they were shooting at. Surely you would want to take your time to ascertain that, yes, you are shooting at the animal you think you're shooting at, and not a human, as well as getting your aim right. I mean, you want to... Are these people just going, thing, and just shooting without taking aim and spending any time whatsoever? I don't know. It just seems to happen an awful lot. I'm kind of wondering if the shooter would have had to pay out for the loss of the man's eye. I think in law, body parts have value, don't they? So like if you were to knock out someone's tooth, you would owe them X amount for the tooth. If you took out someone's eye, you would owe them X amount for the eye, or if you were responsible for someone losing a limb. I'm sure there's something like that in law. It doesn't say that the guy had any repercussions for his terrible action, but I don't know. I don't know. Also, who shoots otters? What are they doing shooting at otters? The man and his brother were shooting ducks. Which, I suppose I can understand, people eat duck. Otters? Why would you shoot an otter? Is that like sport? Do people do that? They're so cute. They have wee hands. And they're just so cute. Why would you shoot an otter? I don't know. I don't know. That's a strange article. Anyway, and it finishes this for today. Shooting otters? Just doesn't seem right to me. Alright, well, we may see you for the next one.